All right, here's an idea. I'm curious to get some feedback. Here, if you would use this, here's how you would like to use this differently. Imagine, if you would, your file folder on your computer. You're inside your browser. Wherever you are, wherever you keep your projects, specifically your new projects. You say, hey, here's a bunch of my projects I've been working on. Let me start a new one. And so you right click. You could click new folder, but instead, just below that, there's another option. It's called Mulch. And you hit Mulch. What does it do? It builds you a new folder, except it's not empty. What is in it? Well, there's a nested file hierarchy to your stipulations. So how do you stipulate it? We can talk about that. But ultimately what you end up with is a whole bunch of projects that all have the same file hierarchy, and you can organize it where these types of projects go in this project folder, and there's another type of project for another thing that you do at your other job, at your side hustle or whatever, and it can have different templates that whenever you hit Mulch, right click, new folder, Mulch, in that directory, it builds you new projects. Whoosh, sets up a brand new scaffold for you that could even be templated files automatically populated with content, but that's according to different specifications based on where it lives. Pretty cool, especially if there's data. What you can have it automatically do is say, hey, check the last time that I started a project in my project folder. And we know what the timestamp was, the last time you hit the Mulch key. And let's say your projects all deal with some piece of data that you have the capacity, an API tool to call that data. And so every time you hit Mulch, start a new project, it can make a graph for that curve, that sensor that you care about at your job or whatever. And what is the time range of that sensor? It's to now from the last time you started a new project. Full update, which is pretty cool, which is better than putting in, one graph for every day since the last time. And that's kind of a use case question. It just sounds neat. And it's like you can have this whole interacting suite. And so how it works is you would have a .mulch directory, a hidden directory in the root of the project directory that you want to stand up projects in very, very quickly. And it can dictate the scaffold. And if it doesn't find that .mulch directory, which would have a mulch-scaffold.json file in it that dictates the file hierarchy, and it can also have the templates in it of the same file names that are included in that file hierarchy, and it knows where to put them and how to drive those templates. If that .mulch file isn't there, it'll look in the root directory, order of operations, for a mulch scaffold.json file, which is what it's looking for anyways in the .mulch folder. You're just saying, hey, maybe there's just a file at the top root that just explains the scaffold. If it doesn't find it there, it'll look in your app data, your program data, and say, okay, well, whenever you use Mulch, maybe you have a standard that you use system-wide. It's always going to stand up that scaffold if you didn't, locally apply a different version. And if it can't find one there, then there is a scaffold structure that's embedded in the Mulch source code. Says, hey, you didn't make any files to tell me what to do. I have a fallback. And stand one up, and you can edit it from there, or you can just learn to use Mulch. So this is supposed to be a user-facing right-click file browser tool. You don't need to make a GUI. There already is a file browser. Now what I started with was a bunch of command line pieces, which we could talk about what the CLI can do. It gives you a lot more options, and the CLI is not made to be as end user facing, where you're just building another like folder immediately. It's actually the folder structure gets more complex, and so wherever you are, it builds a workspaces folder if one doesn't exist yet, and then it puts your projects, your new ones, in there instead of at the root directory immediately. And then it also, if one doesn't exist yet, builds a source code folder and a logs folder stands those up, and then puts some source code in the source code folder that knows the structure of all your workspaces, and it has a quarterback, the workspace manager.py with the workspace manager class inside of it, which at the point that you stood it up, when it read the scaffold file, it knew the hierarchy, and both these things generated separately and in kind, introspectively. So now whenever you write code, it's easy to say, oh hey, go to my current project or my current workspace and drop this in the export directory. Or go to my current workspace and grab this from the imports, or grab this from the configuration. And then it can also quarterback between knowing what is the current workspace. So it makes it a lot easier to make complex references and manage complex workspaces where ongoing projects might share the same source code. And so to set all that up at the beginning of starting to write new source code makes it all a lot easier. And your different workspaces can also have their own script entry points. They can have their own code. They can have their own media files as necessary. So, it's really a quick development strategy to set things up with Mulch and go from there. But then if we also dial it back to say, add a couple flags to those command line arguments that developers might use, and make it really easy where the right-click standard is say, hey, stand up a new project. The user has the opportunity to give it a name, but at first the default name will just be the date. And if there's already one that exists of the same date, it'll offer a longer timestamp. But if you're dealing with pictures, all you probably want is the date anyways. You can choose probably there's some configuration options. And there's probably room for a GUI here, just to allow people to control this, but the best GUI and the smoothest GUI is basically take all that I've built, the command line tool, and just add, register it with your right-click menu in Windows, and you're good to freaking go. Like, this pretty much exists. I don't have the .mulch folder yet. Right now it just uses the mulch-scaffold.json file in the local. You already have the capacity to say, do it here, do it there, don't build source code, and don't build a workspaces file, just do it right here. And then now it's just a matter of testing it while you purposefully allocate a bunch of different .mulch hidden folders throughout your whole file structure, each one that can dictate a different standard, a different scaffold according to what it is you're trying to do. And this way you can enforce your own project organization on yourself, but also within a team.